welcome to Conscious Curiosities, where we unlock the wisdom of the universe which lies within. I'm Maria Luz, your host, an astrologer, certified hypnotist, and psychic medium. Today's episode is part 2, laying the groundwork for the nodal axis shift to Virgo-Pisces. And I find it curious that in the first episode on this topic, I began with the chart of the end of the time that the lunar nodes will be on this Virgo-Pisces axis instead of the beginning of the time. And I didn't intentionally do that, but it fits the Piscean energy of a culmination. And in this episode, I will dive into that Piscean energy, the waters, and explore what beckons us to greater depths. But first, Neptune has been really tugging at me lately, so I decided to just surrender and talk about Neptune a bit. And actually, Neptune is always tugging at me as it is in my first house, square to my sun and opposite my Saturn. And there are 2 stories that I hear often from others in recovery that illustrate the fact that Neptune, who is the ruler of addictions, slips into all categories and none. And people may say something like, looking at me from the outside, things look about the same as when I was drinking daily, but on the inside, everything is different. Or something like, when I was drinking, everything on the outside looked perfect, but on the inside, everything was a mess. And Neptune is at play here. It's the unseeable, the spiritual, or perhaps the invisibility of pain or of freedom. It's nothing and everything at the same time. It's illusion and delusion, bliss, or the powerful cognitive dissonance that allows people to engage in any behavior that they know is not in their best interest. As dual ruler along with Jupiter of Pisces, it makes sense that Neptune demand my attention completely now. And absolute surrender is sometimes the only way forward with Neptune and Pisces. I definitely found that to be true in my case. Neptune has been in the sign of Pisces since 2011. And wow, as I said that, I realized, back then, my youngest, who's almost 23, he was just 10 years old. And when the North Node moves into Pisces on January 11th, 2025, Neptune will be 2 degrees away in a position where it's able to exert energy at this critical point. And with climate change and the mental and physical health problems that our addiction to social media and cell phone dopamine hits has yielded, we're going to need the imagination, the inspiration, and the wisdom that the Pisces energy within each of us can generate. Astrologer Stephen Forrest describes Neptune in Pisces in his book, The Book of Water, as follows, and I think it extends to the sign of Pisces itself. So he writes, it boils down to let go of my personality and experience myself as a kind of luminous spaciousness. The entire point is that I am going beyond the world of labels and appearances. So that sounds pretty groovy, right? We immediately want to label even that description in some way. And this is how conditioned we have been to inhabit the other end of the axis, the Virgo end. We seem to only value imagination or spirituality if it yields material or tangible success. I think of Walt Disney or even the way yoga has been westernized as a commodity. I think people call it the yoga industrial complex. So although this is changing somewhat as more people are feeling the value of things like mindfulness and meditation as daily practices that don't need to cost money, it will likely still feel unfamiliar as the energy becomes more concentrated in Pisces and just in water signs in general, as we, after Libra season, move into Scorpio season over the next few months. And we're already feeling a little bit as Venus just moved into Scorpio. So all of this, it's, this seriousness and all of these big changes for us as a culture are why I wanted to provide a heads up to everyone now, even though, it's still, what is it? It's end of September. And as I mentioned, the nodes are actually moving in January. However, we just had that eclipse a week or so ago in Pisces. So the eclipses can happen within a certain orb of where the nodes are. So that's why, even though the nodes right now are still in Aries and Libra, that eclipse happened back in Pisces, which was close to the Aries North Node. So in typical Neptunian fashion, I've been a little confused about how to do this heads up exactly. I've just known that this is something that I'm called to do. So I ended up settling on using Jan Spiller's book called Astrology for the Soul and her chapter on the North Node in Pisces as a jumping off point. And she's also a musician, which I thought was fitting to Pisces because it's also associated with music. And the music industry is just full of people on this Virgo-Pisces axis. Just to name a few, we have B.B. King, Leonard Cohen, Barry White, Chrissie Hynde, Joan Jett, George Harrison, Kurt Cobain, Johnny Cash, Frédéric Chopin. And so Spiller organizes the information in a way that our Virgo-trained brains can grasp, which is why I decided to end my confusion and go to her book. So I would suggest maybe taking a topic or two from the lists that I'll describe, maybe a topic or two per month to explore, maybe journal or meditate on or talk with your close peeps. Or maybe come back to this episode, every so often. Because I promise, just as the individual versus relationship issues have come up while the nodes have been in Aries for individual and Libra for relationship, we're going to see these themes of categorization versus what cannot be easily categorized arise while the nodes are in Virgo and Pisces. And the following lists are taken directly from the book regarding the placement of the North Node in Pisces, which means the South Node would be in Virgo, in a birth chart. So she's really written this for individuals, but I think we can extrapolate it to the collective experience while the nodes reside here. One thing I forgot to mention is you can look at your birth chart and see where Virgo and Pisces fall in your birth chart, because you will likely be feeling more of that theme of categorization versus what cannot be easily categorized in those areas of your chart. So I will start with the first list that she has, and it's called Attributes to Develop. Being non-judgmental, compassion, surrendering anxiety to a higher power, freeing the mind through meditation and self-reflection, focusing on the spiritual pathway, trusting in positive outcomes, acknowledging connection with the universe, welcoming change. And the tendencies to leave behind are hyper-anxiety reactions, overanalysis, obsessive worry, exaggerating the importance of details, critical first reactions, fault-finding, making others wrong, excessive anxiety over making mistakes, being Mr. or Ms. Perfect, staying in unpleasant situations, inflexibility. In the book, Spiller describes in detail the tendencies that I listed. However, here I'm going to share just a little on the traps that I see as the most prevalent or relevant. And just a caveat is that I've only lived in the United States, and it's possible that some or all of these perspectives are not applicable in other places or cultures. So just keep that in mind. So I've organized them by a few overarching topics. And the first one is on self-concept. We're always trying to figure out where we belong, what our job is, how we fit in with everyone else. And I think of that ubiquitous question when you meet someone socially. It's, what do you do? And what we're actually looking for is the feeling of ultimate security. Like that's where we're getting at with trying to understand like what our role is and where we belong. We want that security, but we're only going to find that spiritually within ourself. And so some ideas to expand your self-concept would be, in addition to meditation, maybe starting to analyze dreams. Like I just heard this statistic that if you live until you're, I can't remember, 80 or 90 years old, you will have spent 6 years in REM. Not just 6 years sleeping, but 6 years in actual dreams. And they're such a gold mine because, of course, you're not conscious then. So this wisdom in the dreams is coming from somewhere else, somewhere much, much older and wiser, than our individual. So anyway, went off on a tangent there. But another way would be journaling. And then the next topic is planning and control. So planning gives us the illusion of control, but due to our interdependence on other humans, of course, perfect control is impossible. And what we can do is to intentionally do less, and in that unplanned time, just see what comes up. Or maybe, plan in some time for spontaneity or daydreaming. But just know that if you go too far on that Pisces axis, and nothing gets done, you may need to just determine what a compassionate form of control looks like. The next topic is criticism. At least in this Western culture, we are excessively judgmental, which brings on unhelpful shaming and blaming, and then all the other things that people do when they feel ashamed or blamed, which is projecting or deflecting or hiding, numbing. So anyway, for whatever, they think that they did wrong or that's wrong about them. And I think maybe the counter attitude would be to just foster some, a good balance of just owning the mistake in a humble way, but also learning. So you're not beating yourself up about it. You're owning it, but you're just kind of learning and moving on, and then just having compassion for others who are trying to do the same. The next topic is superiority and being a role model. And this tendency is about over-identifying with the status that you have, and whether it's an earned status or not, which is in itself kind of a colonialistic or imperialistic vestige about the being born maybe with a silver spoon or in a certain caste, etc. But anyway, it ends up limiting individual growth because you want to hang on to that status. And so therefore you don't ever want to take on the role of a beginner. And that may mean missing out on something meaningful or joyful as a result of being trapped in one role, simply because you know what's to be expected from that role. And even if you do receive admiration because of your role or the status, that becomes less meaningful over time. The next topic is duty and guilt. We can get attached to thinking we are responsible for others. This theme really has come up while the notes have been in Aries and Libra. However, this is a self-perpetuating cycle, especially when others don't share the same sense of responsibility that you do. And of course, I'm not talking about taking care of children because someone has to actually be responsible for them. But at some point, it becomes absurd to think that we are any more competent than any other adult. And we may be picking up their slack just because it's easier than finding a truly challenging calling of our own. Or again, that's become our role and we know what to expect from that. And then I riffed on a few of her themes just to provide a starting point for inhabiting some of that Pisces energy. And one is this theme that she discussed about solitude, peace, and quiet. And I think we need to recharge more than ever. Turn off our phones or go outside. Look at a plant or a flower or a tree. I do that just, I don't know. I do that several times a day. I know maybe I'm a total nature herbalist weirdo, but I just find they're so amazing. Like just the geometry and how the plants, and when I say plant, a lot of them are weeds that I go and look at, and they're so adaptable. So anyway, it takes you out of the kind of superficial or false or competing things that demand attention. And the other things to do could be just to look at art. You could look at art online, look or journal, or just sit there and breathe. You don't have to be an artist or a creative to appreciate all of these things, or some kind of, meditation guru. We all breathe all the time. It's just a matter of paying attention. And the other theme is meaningful work. And there may be more people with their north nodes in Pisces that are activated to find the work that their soul wanted them to do here. I am one of those people. My north node is in Pisces, and I just couldn't avoid it. It was pulling me so hard to leave what I had known and move into this work that my soul really intended for me to do all along. And of course, I needed to have some of those really difficult and challenging experiences, or I wouldn't have acquired the wisdom or the compassion that I need to inhabit this Pisces side. But there will be other people while this activation is happening. And for all of us, I think it's not a bad idea to explore what this would be if we're not feeling spiritual alignment in our current work. And again, when you get quiet and do the solitude thing, sometimes that's when those whispers will come up. So pay attention, even if you're not ready to act on it quite yet. Then another theme is surrender and detachment. And this is the flip side of over-identifying with one's roles and responsibilities. And could we consider that maybe we're not that important, or, at least not in the material way that we think of importance, and instead maybe consider the patterns in life. Where have you put resistance, and how did that turn out? And if it wasn't to your benefit, or if you find yourself just having these echoes of the same recurring pattern, like maybe it's a different person, or it's a different job, or a different boss, but it's the same feeling or the same outcome. What would happen if you instead just kind of simply flow and not keep forcing yourself to get into those same situations? Again, just even if you're not ready to make changes, pay attention to why you're doing the things that you're doing and how you're feeling. And looking externally, maybe there are things that you see in the relationships with that others are doing them that you're tempted to fix, because again, sometimes we don't see it in ourselves, but we sure do see, what other people need to fix. So just maybe letting that flow. Because when you think about it too, if you are fixing things all the time for other people, you're depriving them of the growth opportunity. Then another theme is gratitude and mindfulness. And we hear so much about this, and for good reason. Practicing gratitude forces you to be mindful, because you have to scan your environment or your recent experiences to identify what you are grateful for. And I do this pretty much every day on my recovery group. There's someone, bless her soul, her name's Jen Bartleman. She starts a thread every single day for people to post what they're grateful for. And I just love it. I go and read what other people put there, and I put something down. So anyway, it's awesome. And just to be open to signs and synchronicities. And sometimes they're subtle, and you need to be off your phone to see them or hear them. And I just saw this morning when I was walking with my dog, I heard, a noise up in the tree, because I wasn't listening to something, because I do listen to podcasts sometimes, but I a lot of times also don't. And so I wasn't, and I heard this noise, and I looked up, and there was this great blue heron that had flown into the tree. And that's a sign that my dad, who's on the other side, gives me, and my soul family. And then I looked, and sure enough, there were two more. So I knew my soul family was around. And I will leave you with some lyrics from George Harrison, who is or was a Pisces sun. I think everybody knows the Beatles, but if you don't, George Harrison was one of the Beatles, and also an individual musician after the Beatles. So he wrote, and this was from the song Within You, Without You in 1967. And the time will come when you see we're all one, and life flows on within you and without you. And that is it. You are now empowered to be consciously curious about the lunar nodes moving into the Virgo-Pisces axis. And please follow, review, and share this podcast if you find it helpful, so that more people can gain some benefit. And I would love to see you as a client. So if you're so inclined, please visit my website, marialuz.online. I offer astrology, hypnosis, and mediumship services. And I also have on that website an astrology section where you can find just a bunch of helpful tools for you to do your own exploration. I will put links for a coupon and my Substack and other helpful things in the show notes. And I appreciate you joining me today. I wish you a wonderful day. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.